Part 3, Chapter 5 of Short History of the Christian Church by John Fletcher Hurst. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 5. Luther, Further Labors and Personal Character, 1520 to 1546. Luther was now compelled to pay the penalty of every great reformer. He had to shield his work from the errors of his friends. Carlstadt, a firm adherent of the Protestant cause, began to think that Luther did not go far enough. He declared that the Reformation was still tinged too strongly with Romanism, and, at the head of a fanatical band, the Zwickau Prophets, he made a fierce fight against Luther. Luther wrote to them from his Patmos in December, 1521, as follows: "This business has been undertaken in a harum-scarum fashion, with great rashness and violence. I do not like it at all; and, that you may know it, when it comes to the point, I shall not stand by you in this business. You have set about it without me, and so you may see how you can get out of it without me. Believe me, I know the devil well enough. It is he alone who has set out to bring disgrace on the word." The fanatics would tear down every reminder of Romanism — the ornamentation, pictures, and everything else but the bare walls of the churches. They would make such a thorough work with Rome that not a trace would be left of the old order. They would destroy every work of Christian art, in sculpture or on canvas, wherever found. They turned prophets, and saw visions. Luther, from his watch-tower, saw the danger that threatened the whole Protestant cause, and was ill at ease. He would stay no longer in the Wartburg. Duke George was ready to arrest him, wherever he could be found at large, but Luther was willing to take the risk. His true friend, the Elector, cautioned him of his danger from Duke George, but the reformer wrote back: "One thing I can say for myself, if things are at Leipzig as they are in Wittenberg, I would still go there, even if it rained Duke Georges for 9 days, and every one of them were 9 times as fierce as he." He plainly told the anxious Elector that he did not want his protection; that there was no real protection in a ruler of such faith, and that he, Luther, would go under God's protection to Wittenberg. He kept his promise. On March 3rd, 1522, he left the Wartburg, and proceeding without a guard, reached Wittenberg in safety. The condition of things was alarming. The Zwickau Prophets had frightened the reformers. Melanchthon was too weak in nerve to withstand their boldness. He could not resist them, and trembled for the whole Protestant fabric. The prophets declared that they had received special revelations from God to go even further than religious reform, to resist all civil authority, and set up a temporal kingdom. When Luther appeared in Wittenberg, it brought confidence to his friends and to Protestants. He was wise in every movement, and did not even mention the names of the fanatics. For a week he publicly preached against them, but with consummate tact, and as a result they left the city a disorganized mass. The German peasantry had long been oppressed by the princes, and had several times risen in revolt. In the years 1476, 1491, 1498, and 1503, they had rebelled against their rulers, but were overcome, and yet were kept down only by violent means. The peasantry saw, in the present religious convulsion, another opportunity for revolt. A league was formed in 1514. By 1524 the insurrection broke out publicly, and by the spring of 1525 it was general. The peasants were largely in the Protestant interest. They pleaded the Bible as their justification in demanding liberty of conscience and freedom from civil oppression. Luther was now put upon trial in a new direction. He studied the matter closely, and then took the side of law and order, but in an address to the princes told them of the wrong of oppression, and cautioned moderation in dealing with the fanatics. The peasants were fully conquered, and their leader, Munzer, was beheaded. Luther now addressed himself more than ever to severe literary labors. He saw that his work needed consolidation. He must instruct the people, who were looking to him for spiritual guidance. The Munster fanaticism was proof of the great need of Protestantism for the most judicious and safe instruction. So, by pen and speech, he wrought with prodigious vigor. Through the kindness of friends, his sermons and lectures were published immediately after delivery. They were robust in style, and consisted of strong and often homely speech. The people read each word with the gladness that came from an immediate understanding. His translation of the Bible, the strongest and most nervous and comprehensible ever executed, went all over the land. His principle in translation was contained in his own words: "For translating the Bible we must have a pious, true, industrious, reverent, Christian, learned, experienced, and disciplined heart. We must ask the mother in the house, the children in the alley, the common man in the market-place, how to speak German, and put the language they speak in his own jaws." As a specimen of Luther's care that he might translate the Bible into a language which the people might understand, he had a butcher "kill some sheep for him," and tell him the names of every part, in order that he might translate accurately those parts of Leviticus relating to the Jewish sacrifices. He wrote his friend Spalatin a request to give him the names and minute descriptions of all the precious stones contained in Revelation 21, as constituting the walls of the celestial city. Luther's works multiplied rapidly. About 120 separate writings appeared from his pen. His smaller and larger catechisms became a household possession throughout German Protestantism. His 30 hymns were sung in palace and hut with equal joy. The favorites were his martial hymn, "A mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing;" his Christmas hymn, "From heaven above to earth I come, to bear good news to every home;" his children's hymn, "Sleep well, my dear;" and the hymn of Providence, "Flung to the heedless winds, or on the waters east." Luther's writings were born of the occasion. He saw deeply and felt intensely. He held himself ready to sing or speak or write as he perceived a need and felt an inspiration. He thought in images, and all his works abound in striking pictures. To him the devil was no myth, but a visible creature, whom his own eyes had seen all too frequently. Hence he frequently addressed him as Mr. or Madame Devil. Luther's commentaries were practical expositions, little space being given to philological discussions. It was his habit to present the argument of a book in a full introduction, and in language that the uneducated could understand. His interpretations were crisp and strong declarations of the author's meaning. He gave conclusions, and but little of the process by which he reached them. Luther's personal characteristics were of a very striking character. He was of ardent and impulsive nature, and called things by the first name that came to him. He was born for war, and yet was always sighing for peace. His element was the smoke and flame and violence of the hot battlefield. Yet, strangely enough, he thought himself very mild in language. When a friend once expostulated with him on the harshness of his language against the papacy, he replied, in all seriousness, "On the contrary, I complain that, alas, I am too mild. I wish that I could breathe out lightning, and that every word were a thunderbolt." A hair-splitting theologian once quoted to him St. Augustine's reply to the question, where God was before heaven was created, that he was in himself, and then asked the Reformer what his answer would be. Luther replied, "He was building hell for such idle, presumptuous, frivolous, and inquisitive spirits as you." His opinions were very decided concerning some physicians. Alack for him that depends on physic! When I was sick at Smalcald, the doctors made me take as much medicine as though I had been a great bull. 'Tis these wretches that people the graveyards. Though able, cautious, and experienced physicians are the gift of God, those without fear of God are mere homicides. I consider that exercise and change of air do more good than all their purgings and bleedings. When I feel indisposed, I generally manage to get around by a strict diet, going to bed early, and keeping my mind at rest." In faith, Martin Luther was as fervent as any crusader in the heat of conflict. The time of prayer was his supreme hour. Every prayer was an importunity. He would not think of silence, much less refusal. He argued with God, and showed him how unlike himself it would be not to grant his petitions. He caught hold of the very robe of the Master, and would not let go. Or rather, he violently grasped the divine arm with both hands, and held it until his prayer was answered. He had the habit of recording his wants in the form of a catalogue, and taking them to God in order, as petitions which God could hardly be true to his own honor if he failed to answer. He was overheard to offer the following prayer just before his appearance in the presence of the council at Worms: "Almighty, everlasting God, how terrible this world is! How it would open its jaws to devour me! And how weak is my trust in thee! O thou my God, help me against all the wisdom of this world. Do thou the work, it is thine, not mine. I have nothing to bring me here. I have no controversy to maintain, not I, with the great ones of the earth. I too would fain that my days should glide along, happy and calm. But this cause is thine. It is righteous, it is eternal. O Lord, help me. Thou that art faithful, thou that art unchangeable. It is not in any man I trust. O God, my God, dost thou not hear me? Art thou dead? No, thou art hiding thyself. O Lord my God, where art thou? Come, come. Thou hast chosen me for this work. I know it. O then, arise and work. Be thou on my side, for the sake of thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ, who is my defense, my shield, and my fortress. I am ready to forsake life for thy truth, patient as a lamb. Though the world should be full of demons, though my body should be stretched on the rack, cut into pieces, consumed to ashes, the soul is thine. For this I have the assurance of thy word. Amen. O God, help thou me. Amen." And then, as if in soliloquy, "Amen. Amen. That means yes, yes, this shall be done." When Luther saw the great need of sustaining and building up the people who were following his leadership, he devised wise plans for ecclesiastical organization. In 1527 he and Melanchthon, at the instance of the Elector John, drew up a plan of general visitation. An order of doctrine and service was established. Parochial schools were instituted, catechetical service was enjoined, and full arrangements made for a complete ecclesiastical life. At the Diet of Augsburg, 1530, the Augsburg Confession, drawn up by Melanchthon, was adopted for the Protestants of Germany. In the Convention at Smalcald, the Protestants formed a compact, which was the basis of their subsequent civil and ecclesiastical unity. The theological standard of the Protestants was the Loci Theologicae of Melanchthon. Luther never undertook a systematic treatment of doctrine, but committed this work to his nearest friend, Melanchthon, who was a complement to him in many other respects. Luther's private life was of a piece with his public career. His labors before the world drew all their inspiration from his pure and simple home life. In 1525 he married Catherine von Bora, a nun of the cloister of Nipchen, and henceforth his home became the centre of his labors and the rallying place of friends. His children were his loving companions. In the intervals of his engrossing labors he would sing, and, getting new inspiration, would again take up his pen. Walther, the electoral chapel master, who was deputed to assist Luther in the arrangement of music for public worship, thus wrote of him: "Many a precious hour did he sing. I have often seen him, the dear man, become so happy and transported in spirit that he could not get enough of it. He knew how to say wondrous things of music." Luther was especially fond of having the students visit him and sit at his table. He was always thinking of others, and how he might instruct and comfort. His engrossing labors bore heavily upon him. His early ascetic life left an impaired constitution, which he was never able fully to restore. He went on a journey to assist in reconciling a difficulty between the Mansfield counts, and died from home, but in the place where he was born. He breathed his last, after thanking God for the revelation of his Son, and for having given him the privilege of testifying for him before the world and the Pope. End of chapter 5.